analyzing Dallas Fuel's defense against Philadelphia Fusion on Hanamura. So I'm going to begin with the positioning of Dallas Fuel members, and I'm going to do it on a top-down view map because it's just kind of awkward to discuss that in the actual game and looking for various points of views which I'm interested in. So we're going to begin with the actual purpose of Philadelphia Fusion's attack, and I reckon that was predicted that they would run double snipers because they have done that before. And the reason why that happens is because oftentimes a dive defense with snipers and Zenyatta and Widow positioned in here like this is going to be easy to break with the double snipers, specifically because Hanzo's Sonic Arrow, which can give the friendly Widow a massive advantage over the enemy Widow, as well as denying this position to both the Widow and Zenyatta. And if the picks are made, it's going to be easy win for the fight. The two strategies that are on defense usually is the Orisa strategy here, and that works as a counter dive because it completely denies the entrance to this point, completely denies the sidelines from up here because the Widow standing in this position is going to be able to decimate anybody coming up in this position. And additionally, Junkrat and Orisa both can do a lot of damage as the dive moves through onto point or through this area. If the Tracer comes down onto here, the Diva goes to contest her onto the point. This is how the Orisa strategy works. With the dive defense, it's a similar thing, except this strategy, I really like how Philadelphia Fusion ran it against Boston Uprising on the Week 1 Stage 4. They were able to literally pick off a person or two as they were coming through the gate. Carpi completely dominated mistakes, and that was the Widow Battle 1. Important to point out here because the defensive Widow has a lot of sightlines and positions she can take, comparing to the offensive Widow, who can either stand here, here, or any there in this high ground here. That gives huge advantage. That's why the Widow is popularly run on this map. With the dive, as the offensive dive goes into the point or onto the Zenyatta, the cooldown expelled. Widowmaker can do a lot of damage, and Zenyatta, and the dive onto Zenyatta and or point ends up in theoretically ends up in a loss because the defenders are at an advantage here because they don't need to attack. This is what the two defenses that are popular on the Hanamura Point A are used for. So the Dallas Fuel, they ran sort of a combination of the two defenses. I would like to begin with the obvious positionings, the Widowmaker on here, or any of the area here. This, obviously explained, has a massive advantage against the offensive snipers due to the amount of sightlines and positions possible. Zenyatta, over here, opens up the sightlines onto basically the whole point A. And going into the Reinhardt in here with the shield, he denies the entry point to Winston and Zenyatta, as well as sightlines for Zenyatta, because the offensive Zenyatta, there's nothing he can do against the shield, just spam it. And he can't have any open sightlines onto any positions over here. The Brigitte, positioned over here, or any closer to Reinhardt, would deny the dive onto the Zenyatta, or the entry through here onto the point. The only position that she cannot deny is going through this window here. Hence, why there's a Diva and a Mercy position here. Mercy constantly pockets the Diva, and the Diva, just like in the... like, it's a flashback to USA versus Korea 2017 World Cup match. Flower took advantage of this sightlines because the Team USA didn't have a sniper, so he was uncontested up there, And in the second attack, Coolmat has done a great job contesting the Widow. Just like now, Seagull in D.Va's role denies this entry point here, as well as any high ground from the snipers. And Mercy constantly pockets him, because he's going to be taking the most damage on the team. Zenyatta and Brigitte can do the rest of the healing. And this is the gist of the defense. The only reasonable position the attackers might want to get into before attacking the actual point is this area here, because it's not denied by either Widowmaker, because there's a lot of clusters in here and she cannot see him through the sightlines. And neither can Zenyatta. And what the attackers want is they want to come through here and onto the second point, into this area, regroup and attack the point. This is a reasonable sort of thing to do when a dive is performed on attack against this composition. So now let's analyze how this plays out. Obviously from the start we can already see that D.Va and Mercy position here, Reinhardt, Brigitte here, and Taimu and Unko over there on Zenyatta and the Widowmaker. This is the usual dive approach. Ikyo jumps on to scout a little bit. As said, the sonic arrow is about to come out onto the Taimu's position, which is also advantageous, because Taimu, from this position, he got sonicked, so he can move either here or over there. And also down there on the bottom is a good position, because it's an open sightline for Widowmaker as the enemy is entering through this door on the left here. This is actually a huge misplay by Ikyo. Seagull has expelled the cooldown to boop him and Karpi from this window, but Ikyo managed to climb over here. And at the moment, he had scatter and he was not in any apparent danger. So just scattering the shield of Mickey was probably a mistake, because it was basically a free kill on him. And if that happened, it possibly would have become a steamroll for the Philadelphia Fusion as well as Dallas Fuel. Dallas Fuel would have been completely decimated because they lost one of the key components of their defense. You can see that Seagull booped the EQ off, and now he's back into the same position where he is able to deny him. And there you go. As said, in the gate, Taimu has sightlines. He pops the Mercy and is able to deny him the entry. This is the fight won, and Hodba getting demeched. The reason he got demeched is because he already went into the safe position, but nobody could come through him, so he tried to return to his team so that he doesn't get staggered and dive on while he's alone over there. And he got demeched. That's a misplay in the teamwork of Philadelphia Fusion. The casters right now saying that nobody can get through the Reinhardt. It's reasonable, because Monkey definitely going to lose the 1v1 battle against the Reinhardt. Right now, the next thing's going to happen that is massive for Dallas Fuel is the DMAC on the Seagull goes through, which is unfortunate, but because he's doing so much damage to the snipers, he's able to farm the self-destruct and remake there. That's unfortunate for Neptuno. And this position from Taimu obviously is good because he has sightlines into this high ground on the opposite side. The position from here, Hodbert went in. Sato wasn't able to because he got stopped by OGE at the gate, and that's the purpose of the Reinhardt. And if the Winston is not with the dive, the dive suffers quite a lot, and he tried to go in and was picked off by Seagull because he was sort of lagged behind the actual team. Hodba and Carpi managed to go in, but because they lost their Winston and their Mercy obviously wasn't there, they were not able to do anything on this attack. Approaching half-time, Philadelphia Fusion decides to switch. Oh yeah, this replay here as well. What happened here is self-destruct is placed. Self-destruct is placed over there, and Neptuno goes in to heal up QO. And what I think may have happened is he could have possibly bumped into this piece of map geometry, and it booped him off onto the left a little bit, giving the sightline onto the self-destruct and killing him. I think this is what might have happened. I don't think Neptuno actually just tried to flow into there. Yeah, there you go. He pressed space in order to give himself a bit of a boost as he reached the target, and hit this piece of map geometry, which booped him onto the side. This is how he died. Half-time, Philadelphia Fusion decides to switch to Tracer Genji. This is a smart decision in a scope of things, because this composition counters the double sniper really hard, with the Seagull popping them off the high ground and them not being able to get a solid, hold onto the high ground so they can position themselves and get a clear shot onto Taimui or Unko or anybody else. The switch might work out if they actually manage to flank and distract Seagull's attention onto the point. I'm talking about Carpi right now, because what he might do is he might go through here, not through here because the Brigida denies him the entry, and if he gets through there, he can pick up the Mega behind and then scooch onto the point. So Seagull's going to have to follow him, and then the rest of the team can come through this window and get into this safe spot behind the point where they can then regroup and potentially even kill Seagull or Neptuno, Hurryhook, yeah, as they are in their way. And if they try to not escape but instead fight, they're gonna be in trouble. However, Dallas Fuel manages to they didn't play aggressive, and then the rally comes out, giving the Dallas Fuel a huge advantage in this fight. And with the current health of Dallas Fuel, they were slightly at a disadvantage, because obviously dive is quite strong against this mixed composition. However, the Brigida armor gave him a bit of an extra edge, and they weren't really able to do anything. The dive comes through onto the Mercy. As said, this was not a death because Sada had the Primal Rage, which he farmed previous. This was the first time he was actually able to enter without dying, which shows how strong this composition is against the dive that Philadelphia Fusion has run so far. Sato has just been struggling at the gate. Now the reposition came from Seagull. As said, he regrouped with his team and therefore didn't die. Harry Hook uses Transcendence to help out his Mercy and potentially Seagull, who was back then, but as he retreated, Transcendence doesn't have any effect on him, but Mercy is saved through that. Actually, he didn't take any armor off yet, so potentially he escaped before that. I kind of missed that part. It's not important. What is important is that nobody was lost, and the reposition happened onto this side of the map. This is how this composition works against the circle around onto this side. As the dive circles in here, the shield war on the point is going to be won because obviously Philadelphia Fusion doesn't have any shield. So when that happens, if there's no casualties on the defender's side, they're probably going to win the next fight, unless there's some kind of massive ultimate going on. This is what happened. As half of the Philadelphia Fusion went onto this high ground, the Genji and Zenyatta stayed behind, and they got attacked by the Brigitte and Reinhardt. However, they didn't get any immediate value, so they retreated because they didn't want to leave the backline open for the other half of Philadelphia Fusion's team to go into the point and mess around with. Carpe went in the back to distract Taimu because he's going to be able to put on major damage as the dive goes in. And there it is. They weren't able to get the control of the point because of Brigitte, because of Diva, and just the superior crowd control of damage. Anti-dive right there. And once Taimu has gotten rid of Carpe, he's just able to pop Sato as he tries to retreat, and Hobba as well. Ikkyo now has the Blade, which is the only ultimate, apart from self-destruct, that can sort of wipe the team of Dallas Fuel. This can be a major play from him, but as we already know, it didn't happen. As we are about to see it, Mickey just Brigittas him to death. Right here. That was a solid play by Ikkyo, but he didn't see it, and Mickey was able to provide support to his teammates. How you would fight this composition, I've explained why this composition functions really well against the dive and the double sniper comp, so those two are not going to be any good against the composition. And in my opinion, this sort of defense tactic is built around winning the first fight, because after that you can snowball with huge crowd control ultimate like Earth Shatter, as well as sustainability ultimates from both supports and from all three supports. So this sustain can give a major advantage to the defenders, as well as obviously the defender's advantage, even though if it's like small. So the weakness is obviously the resistance to crowd control, because there's so many things the Brigitte can do, which and Diva booping off from here. So if you deny both of these advantages, you're going to be able to win the fight. And how you would do it is by running Death Ball, and the more heavy the Death Ball is, the better it's going to work out, because if it's Death Ball into Death Ball, the heavier Death Ball usually wins. So running Zarya, Reinhardt, Diva is going to be a good idea. There's two types of actually composition that I can think of. One of them is denying the Widow with a counter Widow, in which case you would run Moira Lucio as the two supports to facilitate the aggressive attack onto this flank, because this is where Zenyatta is, and he's not going to be able to retreat far enough. If he can, then he's going to have to just abandon his team and run for his life. Otherwise, he can die, and then the team can move on to the point. If he retreats further, the attackers can take this area here and split the enemy team in two. They may be surrounded, but then they can move on to the point and thus take control of it, winning out the control point fight. The Widow is denied by the counter Widow, and there's going to be a 1v1 fight across this sight line here, and potentially this sight line here. But the defensive Widow obviously wants the offensive Widow obviously wants this sideline here because this does facilitate the overall direction of the push. Additionally, instead of running the Widowmaker, you can run Brigida, which adds an extra layer of crowd control to the overall death bowl with Zarya, Reinhardt, and Diva, and that allows to win out the Reinhardt wars. And additionally to that, I would recommend running Lucio instead of Zenyatta, because as Zenyatta is sitting here, the speed boosted death bolt running at him and trying to focus him down is going to be a major major win condition for the attackers. If they were able to get that, that is basically a win for them. As this composition and defense, it's tailored to withstand more than one fight in a row. If one fight is won, then both Zenyatta, having cleaned up the tanks of the Death Bowl, or strictly speaking farmed up his ultimate on the dive, which has never been able to go through, he becomes invincible to this dive, and therefore the extra push with the Death Bowl is going to end up as a fail because the win condition is invincible. Additionally, when the Brigida ultimate comes online, there's extra layers of sustain. Mercy ultimate gives an extra layer of sustain, as well as the said Zenyatta ultimate. This composition, this composition is most weak to very aggressive death bowl straight onto this area here. And if that doesn't help, yeah, it's mostly about winning the teamwork fight and the crowd control fight and the dive onto the Zenyatta. If he can be focused down, that's a major amount of damage taken off of the defensive team. And because we're running Moira and Lucio on attack, that's going to add much higher sustainability to the offensive team, as well as just running triple tank with Brigida. So if this defensive composition is run, you want to run the attack that I have just described. Additionally, if the enemy Zenyatta is sitting further back in here, or on the point itself, he's going to obviously be susceptible to the Widow sidelines, which is why Widow can serve as somewhat of an advantage as to force Zenyatta into this hole. Again, the attackers can go through this way, and therefore the swoop in and push the defenders back onto the point. And this is where the composition starts to become more weak, because in a closed environment with a death bowl fight head to head, they're going to be at a disadvantage, as they would like to be playing split like Dallas Fuel did in this sort of arc here, holding down the front line and the gate. This is the end of the analysis of Dallas Fuel's defense against the Philadelphia Fusion.